Please say hello to Bhu Virdi.
I guess I had an empty walk-up song. All right, well, pretend something was playing in the background, something you like. All right, so I'm going to talk about hybrid IT and really tell you that tech is not just tech. Tech is a lot of different things that we do. And as an organization, we try to make sure that we understand a lot of people's applications and their workloads and where they live and how they are monitored and where to best place them. So think of this talk today as more around applications, workloads, mobility, the right location for them. I've got an agenda. I'm probably not going to follow it, but there it is. Okay, so let me start off with something that I found really interesting. I read this book about 10 years ago talking about this area of land. If anybody knows where it is, go ahead and shout it out. But I found it interesting. This area of land is a part of the world, and there's a couple of these places around the world, around this latitude and longitude, that hunter-gatherers congregated. And we all know, as we grew up in our different civilizations, we did a lot of gathering of fruits and vegetables, and we did hunting for animals as well. Certain civilizations thrived of doing that, and certain ones didn't. And the ones that didn't, really, there's a lot of hunter-gatherer societies out there today even. But obviously there's other societies out there that are using a lot more advanced technologies. And so you have to ask yourself the question of why did some thrive and why did some just continue to survive? It's an interesting question. This area of the world had a particular fertile ground, if I'm kind of giving the answer away. So what was interesting about this area is as people were hunting and gathering and creating crops and consolidating animals down into areas where they could actually cultivate these animals, they started getting a lot more time. So if you're out there hunting and gathering every day, that's your job. Your job is to try to get food and build shelter and get more food and continue to build your shelter. But if you can have a shelter that keeps you safe, keeps you warm, and you've got a food supply ready for you, that you're not out there hunting and gathering every day, what does that do for you? That gives us and the human mind the ability to go and expand and look elsewhere and innovate and think of more things. So this area is called the Fertile Crescent. You guys have all heard of it. It's also known as boomerang just because of the crescent shape of what it is. So these societies, especially in this one, they were able to take their area of land that they cultivated, created a lot of crops, and honestly, this area, and I can get kind of nerdy with this, but this particular area, they had so many grains that it was very sustainable for their human health and development, where if you look at North America, you look at Australia, South America, some of these other areas, they had a fraction of the amount of grains that they had here. So these people were able to grow mentally. Their brain power was able to grow. So a lot of mathematics, irrigation systems, writing system, other higher brain functions came out of this area. You could call it luck of the draw, but they took advantage of that luck, and they thrived and prospered rather than just survived. So we go on to the next topic. You guys have probably seen a lot, and I know what you guys are thinking. Is this an IT topic? Trust me, it'll turn nerdy. I'll get it nerdy here in a second. The next topic I want to talk about is kind of along those same lines. You guys watch those Survivor series on TV? I don't mean the Survivor one, but the ones where they put these people in Alaska, give them a toothpick, and say, go out there and go ahead and survive. Right, and I watch them, and they're pretty amazing, right? They get out there. The number one thing they do is they build that shelter. They build that shelter. They get themselves warm, make sure they can survive the elements, and then they start going out. They start setting traps. They start putting in fishing lines. They start gathering fruits and berries, and they really start developing that stock and supply of preparing for the winter type of thing. And as they get to that point, you can see as later on in the show, the ones that really are thriving is they've got that supply of food, water, shelter, fire. Then they start doing other fun things, the things that really, I guess, make us human. They start singing, they start writing, they start journaling, they start doing other types of fun. They put on little shows for each other. things now that they have time to do because they basically have built up these base layers of things that really make us human. So one of the things that we've been going through in our organization is talking about the differences between what a fixed mindset and a growth mindset is. And so when we talk about hybrid IT, when we talk about innovating in your application set, taking a look at your workloads, and as someone that has been in IT for a long time, I'll tell you, we live in a very fixed mindset. And that's because we're at that survival mode. When things are broken, we fix them. When there's errors out there, we try to fix those things as well. If there's things that we are aware of, we may want to implement them, but we understand that if we go out there and change around our database system, our application system, the way our cloud systems are working today, maybe we want to explore a different type of cloud, we know what can happen, right? If it fails, it's our job. So we kind of stay in that fixed mindset. And that keeps us our job. It keeps us going at a steady state. And you can read some of the comments of the difference between the two. A growth mindset is, it's all right to fail. It's all right to explore. It's all right to think about things outside of the box. How can I challenge myself to grow? How can I take the infrastructure that I have today and really try to transform it into something that's different, more efficient, more cost-effective, and a better outcome for the end user? So IT today, I had this conversation. Somebody sent me a funny thing. I can't think of the guy's name in Shark Tank, the bald guy, Mr. Wonderful. He said his son sent him a thing about, you should invest in Tesla. And he's like, why should I invest in this car company? It doesn't make any sense. They shouldn't be valued at that amount. And he said, well, Tesla is actually a data company, right? He goes, they just use the cars as a vehicle to collect the data. They're collecting data as they go through different parts of the U.S. They're taking that data and they're bringing it back home to them so then they can upload that and then sell that data and those kind of traffic conditions and road conditions and the way everything works. And that's where they really make money. And that's true. But I also told them, everybody is a tech company. Everybody is doing this. This is not just Tesla. Everybody is taking their data that they're aggregating, either selling it, applying some sort of data analytics towards it, and then trying to optimize who they are today. So, got a lot of slides. I'm going to make sure I can get through them all. So this is obviously true. Probably even, if the graph went even more, you could probably see that the transformation and the amount of adoption to different technologies has grown even greater. It's not really even kind of covering the pandemic. And some of these slides actually, even for the last couple of weeks, I would say are a little outdated given what's happening overseas. So we change so quickly in IT that our ability to try to keep up is very, very hard. And I think that's where that fixed mindset comes in, where it's like, how can I continually change and evolve and try to adapt to the different world out there where I can barely, have, the functionality that I have today. Okay, this is kind of one of those slides that I was talking about. More and more enterprises are now going into what we call multi-cloud, hybrid cloud. And why is that? Well, we've got a lot of options. 10 years ago, you didn't have the capability to go from an AWS or an Azure, an Oracle cloud. Now that we've got containerization, serverless computing, you've got a lot of different things out there that you can deploy in, and it's overwhelming. If there's a lot of people out here who actually administer a lot of their IT workloads today, you've got a lot of options. And it's confusing, and it's also like, do I have the skill set to actually deploy into these other types of environments? A big factor that we look at today is, do I take my IT workloads and just move them to another platform, or do I have to refactor my entire platform? And that's a big step, and it's a big change, especially if you don't have the expertise to do that today. The bottom one is probably the biggest thing today: staffing. The Great Resignation. We have started to feel that a little bit as well. I think power to the people there, so I'm kind of happy about that. I love to see employees have the ability to have some sort of control in where they work today, their work conditions, their ability to work, how they work, where they work. That's a great thing for us all, that we can have that mobility and the ability to choose where we work. And I think organizations are going to need a little shift in the way they think on how they treat their employees and how they allow their employees to function today. Just making sure there was anything else. There's some pandemic information in there. I think we've all learned that the different types of ways that we work and the information and the infrastructure that we use today is a lot different than it was even 3 or 4 years ago. I asked the question, I was on a bunch of webinars these last couple of years, and I asked the question, what would have happened if the pandemic had happened 10 years ago or 20 years ago? How would we have functioned? Would we have functioned like we did today? Just 10 years ago, could we work like we do today? 20 years ago, for sure not. 10 years ago, maybe. I mean, we almost got lucky of when it happened because we were able to adapt and change fairly quickly. Most people that worked in most corporate jobs were able to take their laptop, go home, had high-speed internet, able to access systems, and still be productive, have your Zoom calls, have your WebEx meetings, and still be functional. If this happened 15 years ago, how would we have functioned? Would we have functioned? That's just something to think about, right? This is one of those slides I mentioned earlier as I was putting together this thing. There's a lot of things out there that are very important to us, but today, just this week, I'll say, I've had a lot of customers call us up today or this week and say, what are you guys doing about cybersecurity risks as it pertains to Russia and Ukraine? Because that's a huge item that's just literally these last couple of weeks that everybody has to be prepared for. What is Russia going to do? Because Russia and China, as you guys are all aware, are very, very, very skilled at attacking cyber through, obviously elections, influences in elections, attacking via ransomware, attacking via DDoS. Ransomware went up, I don't want to misquote it, but ransomware went up 150% over the last year and a half. Why? Because we're all sitting at home on our computers clicking everything that we see. I was just talking to somebody yesterday. His wife got attacked via was it a Nordstrom? I don't know. Macy's, doesn't matter. But she clicked on it because she shops there a lot, and her computer got compromised, and they had to recover something. So ransomware is also very targeted, right? You see these things called phishing, and then there's spear phishing, where we think that it's just a blast of information trying to attack everyone. And certainly there is, but it's also very targeted. We just had this conversation about AI. These guys know what buttons you're clicking on, what sites that you're going to, and I've seen some ones that are very skilled where they know where your kids go to school, and they pretend that the email's coming from an administrator of a school and said, your kid is sick, you need to come home right now and pick them up. Click this link to validate that. And you click the link. So it's not just some dumb robot out there trying to spam you or hack you. It's very targeted. These guys really know what they're doing. Not to scare anybody, right? Just blockchain, crypto, who's in, who's out? Who's in? Nobody's, some people are hesitant to raise their hand, yeah. Crypto's gone up quite a bit because Putin can't access his cash flow from banks and stuff, so interesting way to think about it, but. Okay, so let's actually talk about workloads and what they mean. And when I say workload, a workload, you can think of it, if you're not familiar with the term, is essentially just a list of applications, whether it's web, database, content management type of system, second tier systems like that are really kind of aggregated together. So if you've got a workload, it's a set of applications that work together for a single function. And that's what I mean by workload. And if you want to think of a single application as a workload, that's fine too. But it's whoever takes advantage and whoever takes a look at each one of their workloads is ultimately the point of my conversation here today is you've got to take a look at every one of your workloads and where they live and optimize it and find the best place that they are at. that creates the hybrid IT. That creates the hybrid IT infrastructure that everybody is trying to look for today. And I kind of tried to make the analogy earlier of if you're constantly doing break fixes, or if you're out just hunting and gathering all the time, you don't have the time, energy, and the resources to really take a step back and go, I'm hosting everything here in X. Should I be? Does it make the most sense? And you may argue, well, I'm getting the most bang for my buck because I'm maximizing the amount of compute and storage, so I'm getting a better dollar value by hosting it here. But should it be hosted here? And that's where I think a lot of companies today have really taken a look at where they're at, especially those are the ones that were in Amazon or Azure. It made sense at that time to go all in on one type of cloud because that was the thought behind it. And that was the mandate actually behind for a lot of CEOs and a lot of executives was you got to get to the cloud. And so we all went to the cloud, and then we realized that the cloud has inherently a lot of problems. None that can't be fixed, but you've got to have skilled people who are deploying on those clouds to make it sure, is it optimized? Is it the right way to put it? And when you're in that cloud, who's the user base that is accessing it? That's really the most important thing. So that's the boomerang that comes back is the boomerang is I went in all into one platform in one system, and then they realize cost, they come back out because they're like, it doesn't make sense for me to be paying $400,000 a month into one cloud platform when it might, but it also might make more sense financially to pull that back out and put it into a server. Okay, so technology is complex, duh. But there's a lot of things that I'll tell you from my experience in IT that we didn't really get involved in the business aspect of it. That was probably true about 10, maybe even 15 years ago. But today, if you're in IT, you really, really, really need to understand what your business is doing and how it's functioning. So for example, in my day, I would set up back then, different types of just virtualized cloud platforms and deploy our software, which is a SaaS platform. And I didn't really have an understanding of what the business was. And it really wasn't until I got into this job and understood what is the function of your business, what are the challenges that you're facing today, where's your customer base at, and what's their experience look like, that it really made sense to me to understand that, well, you're hosting this here off of this platform. Maybe you should be hosting it there, or maybe it should be spread across the country because your user base is everywhere. And we'll get into some of these edge conversations later on, but that's really the most important thing. It's like, take a look at your workloads and your applications, where you're hosting them today, and see what the best platform that you should be hosting them on, and then how's that latency and how's the end user experience going to be. And that's where we're really trying to push our message and conversation is it's not just a stagnant way to put all your applications. I was told not to get too geeky on my slides, so I found the simplest one I could. But so I got one laugh, thanks. Okay, so when we take a look at distributed architecture of a lot of different platforms out there, everything is a service. You guys know that. You consume everything as a service. Most people don't even run Word and Excel on their laptop anymore. They're using Office 365 for their applications. They're checking email via a browser. I mean, I have a Chromebook with me that is pretty functional at anything I need to do at work. I could do Visio online. I could do Word. I could look at Outlook. I can use Google applications. I don't need to have anything installed on that laptop to get a lot of things done. So everything as a service, anything SaaS platform-wise, we're pretty much there. And I think, like I said, I asked the question earlier about the pandemic. If somebody just gave you a Chromebook and said you had to go work for 6 months just off of a Chromebook, a browser-based laptop that had no applications that ran on it, could you do your job? Most people in here probably could do their job, just the way the technology is today. So I'll tell you one thing for me. If you asked me in terms of IT, what's the most important thing in IT? If you could pick anything in IT or technology, what's the most important thing? Does anybody else want to give me their answer? There is no wrong answer. How about that? Does anybody have what they might say was the most important thing in technology today? Availability, okay. Yeah. keep it on, okay? How about this side? Come on. Someone, want me to pick on somebody? Information flows, yeah. So I think you guys pretty much all answered my question. It's that middle. Do I have a pointer on this thing? Yeah. Pretend I'm pointing. All right. So it's that middle area. It's really everything you said. It's the network. The network is the most important thing in technology today. The ability to flow information, have it available for you 24/7, deliver that content to where you need to be, and then that data to go from one point to another. My second item, I would say data. Data is the second most important thing in technology today. Everybody's data is getting collected. That data is getting moved to somewhere else. That data is probably getting encrypted. It's being secured. It's being analyzed. It's being sold, and it's being sold back to you. So, and that all needs to happen through some sort of network. So data and network, to me, are the two most important things. And if you don't have a robust network or a way to get your information or your content to somewhere else, you're going to struggle with any type of business that you have. Every company is a tech company. It was what I was trying to get at earlier with the Tesla thing. Okay, workload placement options. So I got 19 minutes. Okay, good. So the workload is what I was talking about earlier. There's a lot of options out there, and I tell people, let the workload be the guide. The workload is inherently a group of applications that are being served up to your audience, to your customers, that are at a certain location, that expect a certain amount of performance, that need to be hosted in a certain environment. Now, what kind of environment can it be? I'll go over some of these in case people aren't familiar with the acronym. But obviously, in your building that you work out of today, a co-location data center facility, infrastructure as a service, a couple of different variants of that, whether it's the public cloud or the private cloud, platform as a service, and then software as a service. And so they all have their pluses and minuses. I'll put up a couple more slides that talk through these things. But essentially for you, as the end consumer, it's you have a choice as well. When you look at Gmail, you're basically just consuming software as a service. Somebody is hosting that email server, let's call it. Somebody has created the interface. Somebody's doing all the back-end work. All you're doing is consuming it through a UI. And for you, there's very little work. You're not backing up email. You're not creating kind of distribution lists or anything like that most email administrators would probably do for you. So you're just doing that as a SaaS. Most things are definitely going through a SaaS through a SaaS platform. Platform as a service is a little less down, where you take a lot more APIs and you do a lot more calls into it. We won't really get into that a lot of it, but AWS, Azure, they have a lot of platform as a service capabilities as well. Infrastructure as a service, when you talk with IT about IT, is your IT department, what do they want to have access to? And then your end customers, what do they want to have access to? And then also in the middle is your service provider, what do you want them to have access? So if, for example, just us, somebody comes to us and says, we want to host with you and put our information on your platform. Okay, what level of access and information does the IT administrators want? What do they want us to have? And that's when you can kind of differentiate between what type of platform you go into. Most people today have very skilled IT staff, although it's, the amount that they have is varied, but they even want to still have control over certain parts of their IT infrastructure, but they want to get out of like I said, the CapEx business. People want to still maintain that level of control, but they don't want to procure the hardware. They want somebody else to go, you buy this hardware, you maintain it, you spare it, you license it. I just want to have control over hosting my applications. This is quite a bit on there, but there's a lot of important things and there's a lot of variability. So one size does not fit all. There's a lot of different things out there when you're talking about hybrid IT and where we should put these different workloads. And so, you can go down the list of the different factors on there. Latency, cost, security is obviously very big. Compliance is very big today. Your information about yourself is out there somewhere. on whether it's an insurance company, your payroll, maybe even Hotmail or Yahoo. It's out there somewhere. And who is that getting shared with? Is it secured? If it gets hacked, is your information out there? Right. A lot of that stuff is a big reason why certain companies put their workloads or put their data in one of these different platforms. It might be easier to do it in an on-prem colocation because they have full control over where their data resides. Where in the SaaS, you can still do it. You can be PCI, you can be HIPAA compliant in a public cloud. You just gotta architect it and make sure you've got the engineers that know how to put that workload in that kind of environment. Other ones, obviously portability. The ability to move workloads from one cloud to another is a very big thing in our industry. I'm hosting today on-prem, and my CIO says tomorrow, hey, I need you to put this in Azure. Okay, well, how is that done? I need migration services. There's a lift and shift. There's a refactor. How am I moving that data over? There's a lot of complex questions on moving into different platforms. And so that portability of information and data is a very big reason why certain companies go from one platform to another. So you may or may not have heard this concept of edge. Edge computing, edge location, edge application, there's micro edge, there's nearline edge. There's a lot of different edge things out there. So I'll give you a brief history of IT for me. Like everything was stored in a data center. That's or let's just say on-prem, right? Everything was stored on-prem. You hosted everything in the building that everybody worked at. That's what it was done. And then what ended up happening is we started to get more service providers. The public cloud started coming up. And so everyone said, hey, let's just push everything out there. I don't have to worry about it. If the power or the utility or something goes out in my building, I'm safe because I'm hosting it in a data center, I'm hosting it in the cloud. And then everyone said, well, this doesn't make any sense because I'm hosting it in Ashburn and my customers are in California. That doesn't make sense to do that, right? So then they started pulling everything back. And this is kind of what that fourth revolution that we're talking about today is. They didn't pull everything back, of course, but they pulled a lot of things back, and now they're trying to make the determination of like, where should we be putting these applications? It is workload dependent, it is dependent on the end user. And that's where we're at today. So companies are out there deploying small edge locations towards their user base. And when I say user, I don't necessarily mean a human. I mean like an IoT device, like literally farming equipment, manufacturing equipment. They're putting compute close to that area, gathering the data, and then at the end of the day or end of the week, maybe they're pulling that data back, running numbers, crunching numbers, doing financials, and then potentially pushing it back, but probably not. They're probably keeping it in a central core data center off of that. So you guys are probably going to be seeing a lot more of that. Tier 2 cities, Tier 3 cities, Tier 4 cities are going to be seeing a lot more edge deployments. Microsoft and Amazon do this today. If you want to buy a slice of their cloud, you can. It's called Azure Stack or AWS Outpost. You can buy their slice of their cloud, stick it in your data center, whether that's in a kind of a multi-tenant data center or your actual on-prem, and you can run AWS Compute or Azure Stack in yours environment. And that's because you want that compute functionality that you're familiar with, but you need that closer to your user base. And so, AWS, Amazon and Microsoft understand that we can't just build 3 big cloud nodes spread throughout the US and everybody's going to go there. You're going to want that closer to where your user base is. Obviously, it's usually people, process, and technology is the big reason why people decide where their workload is. I went over some of these, but from a technical perspective, it's performance. Where does it live today? What's the latency look like? What's the end user experience? Am I doing any type of advanced I'll say operations, right? The thing that Amazon and Azure and Google, what they really excel is they put out new features, they put out new applications on a weekly, if not daily basis. So if you're taking advantage of some of that stuff, it really makes sense to go out there. If you're not, if you've got really stagnant workloads that don't scale either up or down, or they don't need certain functionality, you might just end up be paying more out there because of their fees, whether it's IOPS or whether it's egress and ingress. So it's different to put it out there in those clouds than it is maybe in your own private data center. But some of the factors that we advise people and you should also be looking at in terms of like, where should my workload live today? Added this in there, but this is some of the other things. One of the things I want to point out there today is DevOps. We see this a lot with automation. If you're doing any type of scripting, if you're doing any kind of orchestration with your applications, it's going to matter where you put them, and it's going to matter how they scale. AI was brought up earlier. Do I have the ability to kind of rebuild, make my applications more elastic, that type of things? That's really going to depend on the type of platform that you put them on today. I think this is my last slide. I think. Oh, no, sorry. Got maybe one more after this, yeah. So some of the challenges that we see out there today: spend. How much do I have to spend? Some people like CapEx, some people like OpEx. Some departments like a very consistent bill with IT. I want to know that I'm paying $10,000 every month, and that's what I want to see. And if it goes above and beyond that, I can't handle that. And that's where going into a public cloud, your cost is going to vary up and down. Your finance may not like to see that there's variability in the cost of your IT spend. They want to see a very fixed cost every time. So that's going to depend. That's a factor on where you put some of your applications and where you put and which cloud type that you choose as well. Complexity, mobility of the data is also a very big thing that we see today. I think this is my last slide. So really, these are the industries that are typically the ones that we work with, but I think you guys also see as well as that are adopting the different types of hybrid clouds and workload placements. I don't know if there's certain industries that you guys work with more so today, but these are the big ones that we obviously see. Healthcare is big for us. Finance is really big in the institutions that I deal with. They're multi-locations. The ability to connect different parts of their infrastructure is very important. And so then they've got use cases to put some things in certain data centers, whether that's in a data center in the Northwest or a cloud platform in the Midwest. It all just varies. And like I said, the network is really the key on connecting all those things together. So I'll end with a blank screen. I'll end with thrive, not just survive. So hopefully you can get out of the rat race of just doing break-fix types of things with your IT departments and really try to thrive and innovate and push out new enhancements to your environment. So thank you.